Hi, welcome back to the channel. I want to talk a little bit about hypertension today. Hypertension is getting harder and harder to service connect for veterans based on the VA regulations. Let me explain. The problem is when you've had hypertension for many years and you've been on medication, in order to convince the VA that your initial diagnosis was actually not pre-hypertension, but hypertension itself, you have to meet very specific criteria down under DC code 7101. And I'll put these in the link so you can look for yourself what's 10, 20, 40, and 60% for hypertension. But in the notes, and this is very important, it says hypertension must be confirmed by readings taken 2 or more times over 3 separate days. That's to avoid there being maybe like a white coat type of hypertension where you're really stressed and going to the doctor. You don't normally have hypertension. So for the purposes of this section, it says hypertension means the diastolic is predominantly 90 or greater, and systolic is predominantly 160, that's the top, with a diastolic of less than 90. So basically you're looking for 160 or more up top, or 90 or more down low on your blood pressure, if that makes sense. Just a quick caveat, there are exceptions to the 2 or 3 readings over 3 days. One of them is that you had a past diagnosis in service. We only need to see one that meets the criteria if it was in service, but then again, you'd be connected probably on a direct basis for that. The other one is arose during the compensable period, let's say the immediate year after your release from active duty, then it would fall under a presumptive from 38 CFR 3.309, so that would count. The third exception is it says secondary to a service-connected disability. And although I'm seeing veterans that have very high readings at the day of the exam, and maybe they have one isolated high reading years prior before they were put on medication, they may have it diagnosed in their VA-MC records and in private medical records and diagnosed at the day of the exam and be on medication to control it, you're going to get denied. And the reason you're denied, even though it's a presumptive or TARA, is because you must meet the very strict VA regulations. I think maybe they had in mind that a lot of physicians label patients hypertensive when they first start showing those pre-hypertensive signs, and they encourage you to get on medication because it can be very dangerous. You can have a stroke. And so veterans get on that and they have these hypertension readings on file, but never really developed hypertension. And then you've got the other category that are even on meds and still have an elevated, let's say, upper level, but they aren't taking their readings 2 or more times over 3 separate days. I've talked to other raters about how far apart should those readings be. What if I saw one within a year and then 6 months later a second, and then day of that's a third? Isn't that 2 or more time over 3 different days? It doesn't say consecutive. So for a lot of us, we kind of view that as a year. That's kind of an unofficial thing. So you may find it very hard. Here's what I would give you for advice. Don't go off your medication and try to get the day of high ratings. First of all, you give yourself a stroke. Second of all, that's not going to be enough. You need to look or search for private medical records that you have, either in VA-MC that you can put in a statement to give the exact dates and the blood pressure readings, to find that 2 or more times where your blood pressure met the criteria of being over 160 or 90 or greater on the bottom, okay? And then look for those 2 or more readings over 3 different days and try to find it within a year. And if you've got a presumptive, I think that's all you're going to need. But otherwise, it's really difficult. So that might help clarify a few things. Try to get readings 2 or more times documented in your medical records over 3 different days. So if you have to go for 3 months in a row to show that your blood pressure was elevated into the doctor and then submit that evidence, you're going to be golden. Okay? Hope that helped. Till next time, y'all take care.